All right, today we are diving headfirst into a pretty intense ideological battle. It was sparked by one of tech's most, let's say, polarizing figures, Peter Thiel. In a recent interview, he dropped some absolutely startling claims about the future of humanity, and it provoked a furious, and I mean furious response online. And it all kicked off with one single, very telling moment.
So picture this. New York Times columnist Ross Douthat asked Thiel a pretty straightforward question, right? You would prefer the human race to endure. And Thiel just hesitates for a long time. That incredibly long, awkward pause is the fuse that lit this entire firestorm. It really makes you wonder, what does one of Silicon Valley's most powerful thinkers actually believe about the fate of all of us?
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we're going to unpack Peter Thiel's big ideas, what he calls the machine god question. Then, we'll pivot to this really powerful counterargument that actually celebrates mortality, takes aim at a group the author calls the Ortho Bros, and wraps up with a very stark final warning. Okay, first up, let's get into Peter Thiel's worldview. He sat down with Ross Douthat and basically laid out this vision that's a wild blend of Orthodox Christianity and this really radical desire for technological transformation.
The key concept we have to get our heads around here is transhumanism. Now, for Thiel, we're not just talking about little upgrades. He was talking about a fundamental, radical change, the complete transformation of our mortal biological bodies into something, well, immortal. This is the absolute core of his entire argument.
So Thiel does something pretty interesting here. He connects this super futuristic idea directly to ancient religion. He argues that the whole point of the Judeo-Christian tradition is to transcend our nature. The core idea, as he sees it, is that humans are inherently fallen, messed up, and our ultimate purpose, whether that's through God or through technology, is to overcome that flawed natural state.
But this is where Thiel's whole argument takes this sharp, really unexpected turn. You'd think he'd be the biggest cheerleader for today's transhumanist movements, but actually, he's one of their harshest critics. He thinks they are nowhere near ambitious enough.
So Thiel looks at some of the current efforts at human transformation, and he just dismisses them as pathetically little. His beef isn't that they're unnatural, it's that they just don't go far enough. He's looking for a transformation that changes absolutely everything: your heart, your mind, your entire being.
So this is the absolute key to his thinking. From his Orthodox Christian viewpoint, even the most out-there transhumanists are just not thinking big enough. And why? Because they're only focused on the physical body, the hardware, right? Thiel's saying a real, meaningful transformation has to include the software too, the soul, the very essence of who you are. Anything less than that is just tinkering around the edges.
Okay, so that's the complicated, almost theological case from Peter Thiel. Now we're going to turn to the blistering response from an author who goes by the Appalachian Gorilla, and he offers a completely different vision for humanity.
The author kicks things off not with tech, but with Homer, and this quote just completely flips Thiel's whole idea on its head. It suggests our mortality isn't some bug that needs to be fixed, it's a feature. The fact that our time here is limited is exactly what gives life all of its beauty and its meaning.
And he just keeps that same energy doubling down with Francis Bacon. This idea is a direct shot at Thiel's concept of a fallen or messed up human nature. The author is basically arguing that our imperfections, our quirks, that strangeness in the proportion, those aren't flaws. They're the very source of our beauty.
So here's the heart of his philosophy. He's arguing that humanity doesn't need to be transcended or overcome. Our willingness to sacrifice for each other, the little imperfections that make us who we are, that's beauty. Humanity isn't some fallen creature that needs a radical upgrade. It's already a masterpiece. And this metaphor from Michelangelo just perfectly captures his vision. Our job isn't to use technology to turn ourselves into something else entirely, changing granite into sandstone. No, it's to chip away the extra stuff to discover the magnificent statue that was already inside us all along.
Okay, now the author's argument gets a lot more personal and a lot more pointed. He focuses his anger on a specific group he thinks is pushing Thiel's worldview. He calls them the Ortho Bros, which is basically slang for a certain online subculture of Orthodox Christian men you often see aligning with tech and right-wing ideas.
And wow, he does not hold back. This is a direct, aggressive accusation. He's claiming that this whole ideology, this desire to transcend humanity, it doesn't come from a place of ambition. He says it comes from a place of fear and weakness, a deep-seated hatred for what it actually means to be a human being. The author then explains his personal rejection of what he views as Christian weakness. He draws this sharp contrast between the shepherd's flock, the lambs, the weak, and his own self-image, a lion or a coyote, creatures that are gifted with muscle and intelligence to endure and survive, not to be controlled.
He then lays out his own personal code of conduct, and that final point is absolutely crucial. He explicitly separates this whole vision from Christianity, and he frames it as just pure humanity. It's a code built on strength, respect, and learning, completely detached from the religious framework that Thiel and the Ortho bros are working from.
All right, so the author's argument is now building to this fiery conclusion. After deconstructing Thiel's philosophy and laying out his own, he leaves the reader with a pretty stark and urgent warning.
This right here is his final verdict. He claims the tech bros and ortho bros pushing for this transhumanist future, they aren't some noble visionaries. In his view, they are weak men using their smarts and their money not to lift humanity up, but to insulate themselves from it, all while profiting from the suffering of others.
And he ends with this really personal, urgent plea. It's a direct call to action to his readers, telling them to resist this vision of the future. He doesn't see it as progress. He sees it as an extinction event for what makes us human, the dying of the light.
So at the end of the day, we're left with this fundamental conflict. On one side, you have the vision of transcending our flawed, fallen nature to hopefully achieve immortality. And on the other, you've got this passionate defense of our mortal, imperfect, and beautiful humanity. This whole debate really leaves us with one crucial question to think about. Is our ultimate goal to become something more than human, or is it to more fully become the humans we already are,